All right, listeners, buckle up because today we're going to dive deep into this whole mobile EV charging thing, especially for fleets. And we're going to zero in on Austin and Nashville. And get this, our intel is coming straight from B Charged EV. They're claiming to have like the ultimate solution to electrify these cities. It's almost like imagine ordering a pizza, but instead of getting a pepperoni, you get like a surge of kilowatts delivered right to your EV.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. It's really got me hooked is how this all ties into that bigger smart city movement. Austin, for example, they've been wrestling with these air quality issues for years now. And their climate equity plan that they rolled out back in 2023, it specifically calls for like a 50% drop in fleet emissions by 2030. So, mobile charging, this could be a key player in making that happen.
Yeah, that makes total sense because both Austin and Nashville, they're booming right now, which is awesome, but more people means more cars on the road. And trying to like blanket these sprawling cities with charging stations, I mean, that just sounds like a logistical nightmare, not to mention the cost.
Oh, you're telling me those fixed chargers, the source material we're looking at? They're saying those things can cost upwards of $80,000 per unit.
Yeah.
And that's not even factoring in all the permitting hassles you got to deal with. Then you got to think about the strain on the power grid, especially during those scorching Austin summers, when everyone's blasting their AC.
Oh.
Can you imagine adding a whole bunch of EVs charging all at once on top of that?
Oh, yeah, that's not a recipe for a happy grid for sure. I've been in that situation myself, hunting for a working charger. And it's frustrating enough with just one car. Now imagine multiplying that by like an entire fleet of delivery trucks or buses.
Exactly. That's where mobile charging swoops in like a superhero.
Yeah.
Instead of the vehicle desperately searching for a power source, the power source comes to them.
Yeah, it's like charging on demand. I can picture it now. You got a delivery truck. It's wrapping up its route in Nashville. And instead of scrambling for a charger, this mobile unit just pulls up, powers it up super quick, and boom, back on the road, delivering those hot chicken orders.
You got it. This whole shift towards on-demand service is happening everywhere, and energy is no exception. It's all about providing these flexible solutions that adapt to the city's needs.
This is sounding pretty awesome, but I'm curious about the nitty-gritty, The sources they mentioned, propane and solar-powered units. So is solar always the best way to go, or are there times when propane's faster refueling might make more sense?
That's a really sharp observation. It's definitely not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. While solar, it lines up with those long-term sustainability goals, propane's rapid refueling that could be critical for certain fleets. Like imagine emergency vehicles in Austin that need to be ready to roll at a moment's notice. Speed and reliability might trump the environmental edge of solar in those situations.
Yeah, that's a great point. It sounds like each fleet operator really needs to weigh those trade-offs based on their own needs and priorities. But either way, the benefits of mobile charging seem pretty convincing. On-site charging, no grid reliance, fast charging times. Did I miss anything?
Don't forget about the cost effectiveness. These mobile units, they're a fraction of the price of building out all that fixed infrastructure, which is a huge win for cities and businesses looking to make the electric switch.
Speaking of winners, who are the big ones in this mobile charging game? I mean, the sources mentioned a bunch of different use cases, right?
Oh, absolutely. Let's start with delivery and logistics. Think about companies like Amazon. They're trying to get packages delivered on time in a city like Nashville, which is infamous for its traffic jams. Mobile charging keeps those electric delivery vans moving, so you're minimizing downtime and delays.
That makes perfect sense. And it's not just about speed either, right? With mobile units being off-grid, they're immune to power outages. So even if the lights go out, those deliveries keep rolling. That kind of reliability must be huge for businesses.
You're spot on. And it's not just delivery fleets that benefit. Corporate fleets, they're also feeling the pressure to go green. And mobile charging makes that whole transition a lot smoother. It takes away the headache of those fixed charging stations and lets businesses scale their EV adoption at their own pace.
So it's like dipping their toes in the electric pool without having to do a cannonball into building a whole charging infrastructure.
Exactly. And then you have municipal fleets, think electric buses and garbage trucks.
Yeah.
Cities like Austin and Nashville, they have these ambitious sustainability goals. And electrifying their fleets is a big piece of that puzzle. Mobile charging gives them the flexibility and reliability they need to actually make those goals a reality.
So from what we've gathered so far, it seems like mobile charging has the potential to be a real game changer. But, I want to play devil's advocate for a second. Are we overlooking any potential downsides? Is it really all sunshine and roses, or are there challenges that fleet operators need to be aware of?
You're right to raise those questions. Every new technology has its growing pains, and mobile charging's no exception. Like take those 14-day deployment times they brag about. Is that really feasible in a city like Austin with its notoriously tricky permitting process?
That's a good point. And what about the logistics of refueling the mobile units themselves? If they're running on propane, doesn't that create a whole other set of logistical headaches for fleet operators?
Those are valid concerns, and we'll definitely dig into those aspects further. But before we do that, let's explore those specific use cases mentioned in the materials a little deeper, starting with delivery and logistics.
So we were just digging into some of those potential downsides, and I'm still kind of hung up on that refueling question, especially for those propane-powered units. Doesn't that seem like it could create like a whole new logistical tangle for fleet operators?
Yeah, I get it. But the
Yeah.
companies that are developing these solutions, they're already thinking ahead. They're building in some pretty cool tech to streamline the whole process. Think like remote monitoring systems that send an alert to operators when fuel is running low, so they can schedule refills proactively. No more manual checks on every single unit.
Oh, so it's not like someone's running around with dipstick every day. That's good. Technology to the rescue, once again. But what about the environmental side of things? I mean, propane, it burns cleaner than gasoline, sure, but it's still a fossil fuel, right? Isn't that kind of a contradiction if we're trying to be all about sustainability?
You raise a really important point, and that's where choice comes into play. You see, B-charged EV, they offer both propane and solar-powered units, so fleet operators can choose what aligns best with their goals. It's not about forcing a single solution down their throats, it's about giving them options.
Okay, so a company that's really committed to minimizing their carbon footprint, they could go for solar, even if it might mean a little bit slower refueling in some cases. It's all about finding that sweet spot, right?
Exactly, and don't forget, solar technology, it's constantly evolving.
Yeah.
As it gets more efficient, we can expect to see even more of those solar-powered mobile charging units out there. It's about having that flexibility to adapt as the tech keeps getting better.
This reminds me of when I was stuck in Austin a few years back during that crazy ice storm. The whole city was blacked out, except for a few places with generators. Man, if they'd had these mobile power units back then, it would have been a total game changer.
Absolutely. That's a great example of how this tech can go beyond just everyday operations. It's about building resilience, especially when those unexpected events hit. Think about disaster relief efforts. These mobile units could bring power to areas hit by hurricanes or floods.
Wow, yeah, I hadn't even thought about that. It's like turning a potential challenge, the whole EV charging thing, into an opportunity to create a city that can bounce back from anything.
Exactly. And this whole thing ties into the concept of vehicle to grid, or BTG for short. It's this idea that electric vehicles can actually send power back into the grid, basically turning them into these mobile energy storage units.
Hold on. So instead of just guzzling power, our cars could actually help out during those peak demand times? That's pretty wild, but how would that even work in practice?
Okay, picture this. You have a fleet of electric buses parked at the depot overnight, right? They're plugged into those mobile charging units, but instead of just passively charging, they're also sending excess energy back into the grid when demand is high, like on a scorching summer evening.
So they're almost like these little power plants on wheels, helping to keep the grid stable. That's a far cry from those old gas-guzzling buses, that's for sure.
It really is, and it just highlights how this shift to electric vehicles, combined with these innovations like mobile charging, can totally change the way we think about energy. You know how we consume it and how it gets distributed?
Okay, before we get too carried away with the future of the grid, let's bring it back down to earth for a second. For a fleet operator who's thinking about making that leap to EVs, what are the key things they should be considering when they're looking at mobile charging?
That's a fantastic question. First things first, they need to take a hard look at their operations and be honest. What kind of vehicles are in their fleet? What are their usual routes and distances? How much downtime can they actually handle?
So if you're running a fleet of long-haul trucks that are constantly crisscrossing the country, mobile charging probably isn't the best solution, right?
Yeah, you're right. For those long-haul scenarios, a network of fixed charging stations, strategically placed along those major routes would make a lot more sense. But for fleets that operate within a specific area, like delivery trucks in downtown Nashville or city buses in Austin, mobile charging could be a total game changer.
It's all about choosing the right tool for the job. So operational needs are definitely key. What else should be on a fleet operator's checklist?
Cost, obviously, even though those mobile units are way cheaper than fixed infrastructure, there's still an investment needs. Operators need to weigh the costs of buying or leasing those units, refueling, maintenance, all that stuff, against the potential savings of switching to electric vehicles.
So it's not just about the sticker price, it's about the total cost of ownership. and how that stacks up against their current fuel expenses.
Exactly. And don't forget about those government incentives. There are often rebates and programs out there for businesses that invest in EV infrastructure, including mobile charging, so smart operators. They'll want to explore those options for sure.
Good tip. It sounds like there's a lot to think about, but the potential benefits are pretty enticing. No wonder mobile EV charging is getting so much attention.
It's more than just hype. It's a practical solution that's already being used by those forward-thinking fleet operators.
Speaking of putting things into practice, I'm curious about the logistics of actually deploying those mobile units. Is it as simple as calling up Be Charged EV and saying, hey, drop off a truckload of chargers? Yeah, I'm picturing a forklift unloading pallets of chargers onto the sidewalk right now.
Well, it's a bit more sophisticated than that, but the process is designed to be as painless as possible. Usually it starts with a consultation. The fleet operator lays out their needs and goals. Then Be Charged EV, they bring in their expert team, they assess the situation, and recommend a tailored solution.
So it's a team effort, not just a one-size-fits-all approach. Each fleet has its own quirks, and the mobile charging solution needs to reflect that.
Precisely. They figure out the type and number of units, the best placement strategy, and a charging schedule that syncs up with the fleet's operational patterns. It's like a custom-tailored suit for their energy needs.
Okay, so once the plan is all set, what happens next? Do they just drop off the chargers and say good luck?
Not quite Be Charged EV. They handle the delivery and installation of the units at those designated spots. This could be at the fleet's depot strategic points along their routes, even at customer locations, if that makes sense.
So it's like having a charging station on wheels that can pop up wherever you need it. That's slick. But we can't forget about the human side of things. If a fleet is going electric and using mobile charging, those drivers are going to need some training, right? They can't just plug things in any old way.
Absolutely. You're right. Training is super important. Be Charged EV offers these comprehensive programs for drivers, covering everything from how to connect and disconnect units to basic troubleshooting. They want to make sure everyone's comfortable and confident using this new tech.
That makes a lot of sense. Even the fanciest tech is only as good as the people using it.
Exactly. And let's not forget about the mobile charging operators themselves. These are the folks who maintain the units, refuel them, and make sure everything's humming along smoothly.
So there's still a human element involved. It's not just plug and play. That's why picking a reliable provider with top-notch customer service is so crucial.
For sure. You want to know that if you hit a snag, you've got someone in your corner ready to help you out.
All right, so we've talked about the benefits, addressed some potential concerns, and even dived into the logistics of actually getting these things up and running. But what about those unique challenges we mentioned earlier? How does mobile charging tackle the specific issues facing Austin and Nashville?
Let's get into that. Now, remember how Austin is struggling with air quality and grid strain. Well, mobile charging takes those issues head on. So yeah, mobile charging, it really helps with those issues. But hold on, didn't their climate equity plan also talk about reducing traffic congestion? I feel like that's a big headache in Austin too.
Oh, for sure. And that's where mobile charging can really make a difference. Think about it. If EVs don't have to constantly circle around looking for an open charger, that means fewer cars clogging up the roads.
Exactly. Fewer cars hunting for chargers equals smoother traffic flow and less wasted time, which is a win for everyone, not just EV drivers. It's like a ripple effect of good stuff.
Totally. And it ties in perfectly with that whole smart city idea we were talking about earlier. Both Austin and Nashville, they're putting serious money into using tech to make city life better. And mobile charging, it just fits right in with that vision.
It does. But how does mobile charging actually make a city smarter? Is it just about being efficient with charging?
Yeah, I'm curious about that too.
No, it's definitely about efficiency, but it goes deeper than that. Remember those remote monitoring systems we talked about that keep tabs on fuel levels? Well, imagine if that data could be hooked up to a city's energy management system. You could sync up charging with renewable energy sources like solar and wind, taking advantage of those resources when they're at their peak.
Whoa. So instead of just charging whenever you could charge EVs strategically, like when the grid is already overflowing with green energy, that's pretty slick.
It is, and that's just one example. The potential for weaving mobile charging into a smart city's infrastructure is huge. We're just scratching the surface here.
Yeah, this whole conversation has got my wheels turned to the source material it focuses on charging EVs. But what if these mobile units became more than just chargers? What if they were like mobile power hubs that could provide electricity for all kinds of stuff?
Now you're thinking outside the box. That's a fantastic idea. And it aligns perfectly with the concept of a resilient city. Imagine being able to quickly deploy those power hubs to areas hit by a natural disaster, providing emergency power to homes and businesses.
That would be amazing. Or think about outdoor events like concerts or festivals. Instead of relying on those noisy, polluting generators, you could have these mobile power units, providing clean, quiet electricity.
Exactly. It turns a challenge, the need to charge EVs, into an opportunity to build a more adaptable and resilient urban environment.
Okay, so we've talked about how mobile charging benefits fleets, how it fits into that smart city vision, and even how it could go beyond just charging vehicles. But let's not forget about our two-star cities. How did these benefits play out specifically in Austin and Nashville with their unique characteristics?
Right. Remember how we talked about Nashville's crazy growth and sprawl? Well, mobile charging scalability makes it a perfect match for a city that's constantly expanding. As new neighborhoods and businesses pop up, you can easily deploy more mobile units to keep up with that demand for charging.
It's like having a charging solution that grows right along with the city. No need to tear up streets and install all that expensive fixed infrastructure that might be outdated in a few years.
Exactly. And for Austin, which is all about shrinking its carbon footprint and cleaning up its air, mobile charging offers a way to speed up those goals without overloading the power grid. By coordinating charging with renewable energy, you're essentially making the whole transportation system greener.
It's like turning those electric vehicles into these symbols of a more sustainable city.
I like that, but let's zoom out for a second and think about the bigger picture.
Yeah.
What kind of ripple effects could mobile charging have on the entire transportation industry?
Whoa, that's a big question. Where do we even start?
Well, one potential disruption could be a drop in demand for fixed charging stations, especially in those crowded cities where land is so valuable if charging can come to the vehicle. You don't need to dedicate as much space to those massive charging hubs.
So instead of rows and rows of charging stalls and parking lots, we
Sure.
might see more of these mobile units strategically placed throughout the city. That could free up valuable real estate for other things, right?
Exactly, and it could also change the way electric vehicles themselves are designed. If we know that charging can come to the vehicle, we might not need those big, heavy battery packs that take up so much space and add all that weight.
That's a fascinating point. Smaller battery packs could mean lighter, more efficient EVs. That might even be more affordable.
You got it, and let's not forget about the impact on energy distribution. Remember that V2G concept we discussed earlier? Well, mobile charging units could be crucial in making that happen. They could act as the go-between connecting the vehicle and the grid, making that two-way energy flow possible.
So our cars wouldn't just be using energy, they could actually be part of the energy solution, helping to stabilize the grid and maybe even contributing to a more decentralized energy future.
That's the idea. It's about moving beyond that old-school model of centralized power generation and creating a system that's more flexible, resilient, and sustainable.
This has been a really eye-opening deep dive. We've gone from the basics of mobile charging units to this grand vision of smart, resilient cities and even a glimpse into the future of energy itself.
It has been quite a journey, and I think it's safe to say that mobile charging is more than just a handy way to charge up EVs. It's a game-changing technology that has the power to reshape the way we think about transportation energy and the very heart of our cities.
Absolutely. Well, on that electrifying note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. It's been a truly fascinating look at mobile EV charging and how it could transform our cities and our world.
Thanks for joining us. Remember, the future is always changing. Stay curious and never stop exploring the possibilities.